and now all the mess gonna start on the board, so get ready for this.
So Rapport opened up the game with the move on d4, and Andreikin sticks to his guns. He plays the move d5, c4, e6, so the queen's gambit declined, and after the move knight c3, a6. So this is the same opening he played against Sam Shangland, a trade happened on d5, and in that game, Sam played the move knight f3, Black played knight f6, and Sam had maybe a bit of pressure, but in the end, Andreikin made quite a comfortable draw. But Richard comes up with this very original move, a3. So with this move, he wants to get Andreikin out of his preparation. And Andreikin's like, okay, you know what? I want to take you out of your preparation as well. So he plays the move h6. We thought that probably Richard did not expect this move to come on the board, but he played the move bishop f4, developing the bishop. Now cannot come to g5 anymore. So Black plays knight f6, e3, and here Andreikin came up with quite a interesting move. He played the move c5.
Indeed, Andreikin struck back in the center. Immediately, he could choose to go with c6 and to have the common setup of the queen's gambit declined, but he found this opportunity to strike back in the center, and that is quite interesting approach. But here we have another impressive move, bishop to e5. Usually, we don't often move one piece often while the rest of the king side is not developed and the king is not castled. But now white has a serious threat. White wants to take the knight on f6 and queen takes, then the pawn on d5 will be hanging. So white wants to win this pawn, and there are not too many ways to avoid this, but Andreikin went for bishop e6, and that's obviously is the way how to guard the 5 pawn. And here we were analyzing some lines how white could proceed the game, and there was two main ways. The first one to bring the knight on e2 and then f4 to still keep the look at the 5 pawn, or then to play g3 and bishop g2 to flank the bishop on this diagonal. So Richard here chose the way to develop the knight first, and after knight c6, this knight went to the f4 square. And now Andreikin made very important decision, Benjamin, as he traded the pawn in the center.
Right, so he took on d4. Richard took back with the bishop. And now since bishop takes f6 is always a threat, Andreikin decided to trade off the bishop for the knight, and Richard recaptured. So the pawn on d5 is isolated, so that is always a weakness. However, black does have some activity. So he played bishop to d6 and here g3 by Richard. So Andreikin followed up with rook to c8, bringing this rook into the game. And here we expected Richard to take on e6 and go bishop h3, and white has a little bit of pressure because the pawn on e6 is always a little bit weak. But instead of that, Richard played the move rook to d1. And here Andreikin played queen a5. So the move queen a5, he's trying to go bishop takes a3 many positions, which is why Richard played the move rook c1 to add another defender to the knight on c3. Dmitry castled. And here Richard finally decided to trade his knight for the bishop on e6, and after pawn takes e6, play the move bishop to h3. And actually, there's not really an easy way of defending this pawn on e6.
It is not, and Andreikin here came up with the idea to guard this pawn with the king. The queens and rooks, bishops, knights, all these pieces are still on the board, and we know that it can get really tricky when king is too early into the center. However, here Andreikin had an idea to play rook c4 to attack the queen, and then to bring another rook on c8. Well, at this point, rook c8 would be a blunder, as white prepared this little trick here by blown up the center with e4 pawn, and this is just the drawback of the king f7 move, as the king is now placed here. E4 move is very strong, and yeah, black can take this pawn by the pawn, as bishop on d6 is not guarded. This will drop a piece. If you take with a knight, then knight captures this knight, threatens knight d6 jack. You cannot take this knight back with the rook, as the c8 rook is hanging in the end. So there was a lot of complications here, and obviously Dmitry would not like to go in there, so he played bishop to e5 to stop e4 pawn coming forward, because if white plays now e4, Black will have a chance to trade the knight on c3 and then to take the pawn on e4, and this could be a quite safe position for Black. So after this move, bishop e5 here, Rapport decided to keep the knight on the board, and he played knight to e2, and he had very tricky ideas, and he was looking for a perfect square for the knight, and in some of the lines this knight might come to d4, or knight can come also to f4, with the idea to hit on e6 pawn. Yeah, let's see now what happened.
Indeed, so Andreikin brought his rook into the game, rook fc8. The trade happened on c4, and Richard didn't want to sacrifice his pawn on b2, so he played the move b4, hitting the queen on a5. And Andreikin played queen a4, and here the game was proceeding, quite quietly. And Richard played knight f4, a good move. He's forcing Black to give the bishop on a4 because his pawn is under attack. Queen g6 is also a threat. So Black traded, pawn takes f4, and then Andreikin dropped the queen back to c6. So here Richard played queen e3, hitting the pawn on e6. And we thought, okay, Andreikin could probably play the move rook e4. And we felt like the game was probably headed for a draw, maybe something like this. Just repeat the position of rook c4 and rook e4. But instead of that, Andreikin played the move knight e4, which also seemed to be completely fine. Richard played f3. And here you don't really want to move the knight, because if you move the knight, then white goes rook e1. And all of a sudden, you can't really protect the pawn on e6. So Andreikin played rook to c3, hitting the queen. The queen moved to d4. Rook to c4, hitting the queen once again. The queen moved to e3. Rook c3, queen e4. So we thought we were just headed for a draw. But after Andreikin played rook to c4, here Richard went for a long thing. So we thought, okay, is he just going to claim the draw here with queen e3? But nothing seemed to be further from the truth.
No, we thought that he spent all this time just to enjoy himself, to look all these lines there, and then when he dropped his time down to 2 minutes, we were sure that he was writing down the move and calling for the arbiter to fix the draw. And out of nowhere, we got a move here, but this move was very interesting move, which is queen to e5, and now all the mess gonna start on a board, so get ready for this.
Indeed, so after queen e5, Black played the move knight at d2, and here's where all the chaos starts. So the rook on f1 is under attack, and if you play rook to f2, Black gives a check on c1. If you go king g2, then Black goes knight to c4, your queen is under attack. You also have to make sure that you keep guarding this e3 square, and if you go queen d4, Black has rook d1. If you take that rook, then knight e3, you're going to lose the queen. So you cannot save your rook here. So Richard realized that and played the move f5. So he's going all out. He's sacrificing this rook on f1, but he's going all out after the Black king. Now here we thought that maybe a move like queen b6 would have been slightly more accurate, throwing this check in first, because if white goes rook f2 now we have this check, the rook is pinned, and we win the queen. But Andreikin decided to take the rook on f1 right away. So Richard played pawn takes e6 with a check, and here's where the position became extremely complicated.
It was so complicated for Andreikin. First of all, it was quite hard for him to come back into the game, as very likely he already was ready that the game can end with a draw, and very likely he was also considering how to start a date to the tie breaks tomorrow. So it is quite hard to just change your mindset, especially when you have few minutes on the clock. And what we just mentioned earlier, this queen b6 check included was very important here, as in most of the lines Black has the threats of knight g3 check. So that was so important check here. King could go to some safe spot, and now what is really important, if white is careless, Black can threaten checkmate by himself by knight g3 check, rook c1, and then rook queen to g1 checkmate. So there was very important check, but seems like Andreikin completely got confused in this position, had not enough time to figure out this kind of ideas and nuances, and he went to knight f1, a little bit inaccuracy move. And now after e6 pawn was dropped, he went to king e8 rather fast, and very likely this move was not also that accurate, as black could play some other moves to king g8, king e7. All these moves just requires more calculations, and he had no time for it. And this was really good for Richard, who also was struggling on the clock. But Richard has more easy game now, as he captures the pawn on g7. He threatens several more checks, and even in some lines there is move like e7 check and e8 to promote to the queen. So there was a really good decision by Richard to keep this game still going on.
And he took queen takes g7 was played. Here we thought black might still be able to hold the draw with the move queen c7, offering the queen trade. And if white goes queen g6, we go to e7. White can take this rook on f1, but black now goes queen b6 check. And if the king steps up, note that this check is stopped by the queen, but black probably can go queen takes e6, because it feels like this pawn game should probably be a draw, because white is up a pawn here, but black gets a protected passer. So white can push the pawns forward, but eventually the king will have to make sure that the c pawn will always be stopped. But instead of that, Andreikin played queen b6 check, and this was probably the losing mistake. So Richard now captured on f1, rook c1 check, king e2. Here we thought that the last chance for Andreikin was probably the move queen c7, and the way to win here for white is super difficult to find. White can play queen h8 check, and after king e7, bishop f5, because his bishop on f5 is covering the checks along this diagonal, and it looks like black's just running out of checks, because you have to move queen c4, but white just goes king to d2, and look at this, the queen and the bishop are covering all the key squares. Black doesn't have any checks, and after that, white is going to take the black king for a hunt. So instead of that, Andreikin also got into very serious time pressure and played the move rook e1 check. He sacrificed his rook hoping for a perpetual, but it did not seem to be quite there. Richard captured rook, queen e3 check was played, king d1, queen d3, king c1, queen e3 check, king b1, queen d3. Here Richard played king c1 check to reach a time control, but once he reached that, he figured out the right way.
Mm-hmm. And what's really crucial for Andreikin at this point, when he sacrificed the rook, they were moved on 37, 38. So they just needed to make 3-4 more moves until the time increment, where both players gonna get 30 minutes on the clock. And obviously that was the best for Richard Rapport, as he has now extra bishop and a lot of pawns and winning position, and he clearly needs some time to figure out the way how to win. And Richard found the way how to win, and all he needs now is to bring the king in the edge of the board, that's a1, and then to cover these checks by the queen, queen b2. And yeah, after long thing, not so long probably for Richard, he found this way, and he started to blitz out the moves, and yeah, obviously he found the way how to save the king out of the checks.
Indeed, so went king to b2, queen e2, king a1, black goes queen c1 check, king e2, and queen c4. So here the queen cannot block just yet, but after king b2, queen e2, king a1, if you give a check on d1 or e1, so to speak, white goes king e2, and if you go queen c2, queen e2, or queen e2, white brings the queen back. There's no more checks. White is up a bishop and a couple pawns, so white is just completely winning. So at the end of it all, Andreikin played queen f1. A last little joke, Richard captured the queen, and with that, Richard won the second leg of the FIDE Grand Prix, and this was your rapid recap of the day.
Yes, and here you have the update is a leader board here, and we can see after 2 Grand Prix, Richard Rapport is now new leader, as he has 20 points, and he is the winner of the second leg. The rest of the players have to play third leg, including from Hikaru Nakamura, Dmitry Andreikin, Levon Aroni, and Anish Giri, Lenier Dominguez, they as well as Maxim Vashelegrov. All of them have very good chances for the third leg, which is going to happen in few days in Berlin. And once again, congratulations to Grandmaster Richard Rapport for an amazing performance and amazing games and crazy decisions he made at this event. It's totally worked out.